それではお待たせいたしました。 TE-01 クラウドジャーニーグローバル事例に見るエンタープライズ企業におけるクラウド導入の流れのご紹介を開演いたします。講演は Amazon Web Services ヘッドオブエンタープライズストラテジースティーブン・オーバン様です。それではスティーブン様、よろしくお願いいたします。
Konnichiwa, Tokyo. Thank you very much for being here with us today. I realize what a time commitment it is for all of you to take a day out of your busy schedule to spend time with us, and we really appreciate you being here. I personally find it quite humbling to be able to talk to many of Japan's forward-thinking IT leaders all in one room today. Like all of our events, like all of our events, is much more of a learning and development experience, much more than a sales and marketing conference. I hope that in addition to attending these sessions, you get an opportunity to talk and network amongst your peers. There are several thousand companies represented here at the event today, many of whom are doing some very amazing things with technology. So if you think about enterprise IT today, it tends to have well-established and sometimes functional compute virtualization, storage models, governance, network topologies, all of which needs to be thought in a slightly different way in a world where there is globally available and infinitely scalable IT resources. So as more and more companies realize this, they're also beginning to realize that running their own infrastructure typically does not help them meet their business goals. So today, what I hope to be able to do is help you understand how the cloud can meet your business objectives at a pace that you're comfortable with, that will accelerate over time, and that will allow you to take advantage of your existing assets. So first, a little bit about my background. I started my career as a developer at Bloomberg, and I spent the first 7 or 8 years across a variety of development and leadership positions across Bloomberg's equity and messaging platform. And then in 2008, when the markets took a nosedive, Bloomberg found themselves in this very uncomfortable position where they had gone from 30 or 40% year-over-year growth, and they were now looking at negative to flat growth. So the company came out with this financial incentive plan to try and get everybody to think about new ways to create new businesses to take advantage of Bloomberg's core competency to drive new revenue streams into the company. So I got together with a handful of people who I had worked with in the past, and we had this hypothesis that if we treated a professional athlete like an equity and a professional sports team like a portfolio, and we applied the same kind of software and analytics that Bloomberg had developed in the financial markets to the rich amounts of data that is now being collected in professional sports, we could build a business to help professional sports teams manage their operations more effectively. And so we founded Bloomberg Sports, and over the course of the next 3 years, Bloomberg invested in 15 or 16 similar such business lines: Bloomberg Law, Bloomberg Wealth, Bloomberg Government, Bloomberg Real Estate. We bought BusinessWeek.com. And in 2011, we realized that as a company, we were very good at managing infrastructure for the Bloomberg terminal, which was a 30-year-old, highly optimized and well-established business. But we were really bad at managing infrastructure for a bunch of startup companies that we didn't know would even be around in 6 months. And all of the business P&Ls were much less attractive than they should have been because they were weighed down by these very heavy infrastructure costs. So I was asked to do something about this, and in 2011, we developed Bloomberg's private cloud. Now, on one hand, we lowered the costs for each of the business units by about an order of magnitude, and we were able to deploy infrastructure much faster than we were previously. But on the other hand, we were still left wanting more. Everybody, all of my customers, the CTOs of all of these different business units, felt that we would be much better off if we were taking advantage of the pace of innovation that's now being made by the cloud market leaders like AWS, and using my resources to help devote towards each of these different business lines. So I concluded that there's no way I would ever be able to keep up with commercial vendors, and I resigned to the idea that building a private cloud is not a good use of company resources. So when I became the CIO of Dow Jones in 2012, I knew not to make the same mistake. I'll talk about many of my Dow Jones experiences throughout our talk this afternoon, but I'll start by saying last year, I had a moment of clarity. This whole cloud thing is inevitable. It became so clear to me that companies should not be spending their scarce resources on things like managing infrastructure that don't bring revenue into the business. In 2012, when we started our cloud journey, we had an awful lot of skeptics, both inside the company internally as well as externally, who thought that we were crazy for trying to use cloud in a serious way for our enterprise. Not only were we able to prove them wrong, but we also surpassed even our own expectations. What we were able to accomplish, largely because of AWS, was nothing short of transformational. We went from 70% of my resources focused on IT operations to 70% of my resources focused on product development while reducing my costs each year. I certainly will not claim that things were perfect. They definitely were not, but they were a lot better than they had been before. So now I feel very lucky to have what I think is the best job in the world. I get to take my experiences using AWS to transform IT, marry them with the experiences of other IT executives, and help companies all over the world be successful in transforming their business using the cloud. So what I'm seeing as every company unlocks the value that cloud has to offer is they all have to answer for themselves one very important question. What if you could devote 30% more of your resources to your business? Now, I'd like everybody to think about this for a minute. This is going to be different depending on your role. If you're an executive, this might mean that 30% of your staff and your budget would go towards product development. If you're an individual contributor, this might mean that 30% more of your time might go to developing things for your customers. But I'd like everybody to keep this in the back of their mind as we move through the rest of the presentation this morning. I'll keep coming back to this as the important question that you'll have to answer for yourself as you start to get some of the benefits from the cloud. So when I was a CIO, I tended to look at my department as having 5 different parts. I was always tweaking my department to best meet the needs of the business, but I often came back to this view when thinking about how to optimally split responsibility across a very large IT footprint. So on this side, you have business applications. These are the applications that drive revenue into the company. Digital products, mobile applications, e-commerce, point-of-sale systems, and so on. Next to that, you have corporate applications. These are the things that make your company productive. Sometimes it's referred to as back office. Collaboration, ERP, word processing, legal, those sorts of applications, financial. Next to that, you have end-user computing, IT support, desktop support, mobile device management. And underneath that tends to be infrastructure, data centers, storage, servers, networking, and all of that usually in big companies tends to be centralized across the other 3 parts of IT. And then today, of course, in everything that we do is information security and all the tools that go along with keeping your business and your corporate information safe. So let's think about for a second, why is infrastructure so commonly centralized? So my point of view is that it's because infrastructure is slow, it's expensive, and it's really hard to do infrastructure well at scale. So oftentimes, companies find ways to centralize these to get economies of scale across an entire organization. But then think about for a second, Where do your customers want you spending most of your time? Where does the rest of the executive team want you spending most of your time? And I hope that your answer is in the business applications and the things that drive revenue into the company. Now, I think that all of the other parts of IT are very important, and not doing them well can certainly hurt your business, but doing them marginally better than the competition is not likely going to materially improve your results. So Jeff Bezos, Amazon's founder and CEO, often talks about how in business it's useful to think about the things that are constant, the things that don't change. Everybody always talks about the things that change. Technology is one of them. And if you hear Jeff talk about some of the customer obsession philosophies that have made Amazon.com so successful over the last several decades, you'll hear Jeff say things like, it is impossible to imagine a future where customers of Amazon.com want to pay more for their goods. It's impossible to imagine a future where customers of Amazon.com want their items shipped to them more slowly. So we think about this the same way at AWS. It's impossible for me to imagine a future where my CEO comes to me as the CIO and says, Steven-san, I really like that you kept our email up this year, but I wish you would spend more time managing the data center instead of building products for our customers. These conversations, they're just not going to happen. What are the chances that your customers come to you and say, gee, I'm really glad that you were spending all that time on managing your data center, and I wish you would do more of that than build the products that I pay you for? It's impossible to imagine that these conversations are going to be happening. So AWS has innovated so quickly over the last several years that we now have solutions that cut across every part of IT. Our early services were well suited for infrastructure and security. And as over the last several years, we've helped many companies become more effective in these areas, we've also learned that many companies still feel that they spend too much time on the undifferentiated heavy lifting that's associated with other parts of IT. So through listening to these customers, we've developed a number of solutions that hit upon every area. In the corporate application space, WorkDocs will let you share files across your organization. WorkMail is a secure and exchange-compatible email solution that lets you decide where in the cloud your content will reside. In end-user computing, Workspace allows you to manage desktops for your workforce in the cloud. Imagine a world where desktop support can be run entirely remotely, and with a click of a button, you can get a much more powerful desktop for a user for just a few dollars a month. As we continue to innovate on the information security space to provide you with the most trusted and secure platform, we'll continue to add features and certifications that will allow you to add and run your most sensitive workloads on the cloud. On top of all this, the AWS Marketplace has thousands of solutions across every single part of IT. We've taken the same concept that's allowed Amazon.com to exponentially grow its product inventory and have allowed enterprise IT vendors to sell their AWS-compatible solutions in the marketplace. This gives our customers a broad selection of solutions that they can deploy in seconds into their infrastructure. Nowhere else can you find an inventory of solutions this large, all of which can be procured the very same way that you procure AWS services today. Also coming very soon is the AWS Service Catalog, which will allow centralized IT administrators to control what types of services are used where in their organization across a global workforce. In addition to the services that we offer, there are a number of credible IT vendors that are now developing cloud-based offerings, some of which are developed on our platform, that are helping organizations shift more and more of their focus to the needs of their business. We think that this growing ecosystem is great for the industry because it helps give you the cloud muscle memory you need in your organization to take advantage of more cloud offerings, but also great for us because it keeps us hungry to innovate for your business. So what I hope that this picture illustrates is that AWS can help make your entire IT organization more effective. It means that you can start taking advantage of what AWS has to offer anywhere in your IT footprint. Chances are that once you start to realize the benefit in one area of IT, you'll be able to extend that learning out and use it in other parts of IT as well. So we've seen this happen now across a number of customers, many of whom have large and established IT organizations. In the media segment, my alma mater, Dow Jones and News Corp, went cloud first and is in the process of migrating over 50 data centers to the cloud. Fairfax Media, Condé Nast, Hearst, the New York Times, and many, many other companies, media companies, are doing the same. In healthcare, Johnson & Johnson is using workspaces to enable tens of thousands of contractors to work remotely in their environment without having to purchase a single device. Merck is using DevOps to enable all of their different business units to be more effective across their organization. In the travel industry, Qantas is using AWS to dynamically compute flight routing and enhance their customer loyalty programs. The weather company, processing billions of weather events each and every day and then distributing that to their millions of customers. In financial services, Suncorp in Australia, Dow Jones again, and many other financial institutions all over the world are using AWS to devote more of their resources to their business. When it comes down to it, every imaginable business segment is using AWS in a meaningful way. We've also built a very large public sector business. More than 1,600 government agencies around the world are using AWS to quickly procure and manage their IT assets, as well as reduce deployment time and costs substantially. Many government agencies are enjoying the benefit of having a common infrastructure so that they can collaborate on projects across departments, sometimes using the marketplace to be much more effective as a whole unit. In addition to this, there's more than 3,600 educational institutions all around the world that are not only using AWS for IT, but also now including AWS in their curriculum to help students be more ready to enter the workforce with cloud skills. So this is going to be slightly different for each organization, but this is the trend that we're seeing in organizations that do this really well. End-user computing and corporate applications need to rely less and less on the infrastructure underneath because increasingly they're being run with solutions in the cloud. This is allowing organizations to focus their effort on the business processes that are associated with these parts of IT rather than the underlying infrastructure to manage it. DevOps, or some other aptly named cloud center of excellence, becomes a much more cost-effective and agile way to provide best practices, automation, and governance across all of IT. This is the transition that frees up your precious resources to work on what matters most to your customers, the business applications that drive revenue into the business. So I've now had the opportunity, been very lucky to have the opportunity to speak to CIOs from all over the world. And I always hear a very similar story. Yes, the cloud can save you money. Yes, the cloud can help you deploy your applications faster. Yes, it can help you get a better security posturing. Yes, it can help you go global. But at the end of the day, what CIOs who do this well are really after is the ability to dedicate their resources to what matters most to their business. So the question then becomes how? What are the things that you as an organization need to do in order to be able to begin to make this shift? So getting there is a journey, and that's going to be at the heart of the rest of our discussion this morning. This is not something that is going to happen overnight. It's an iterative process that will involve thinking about IT a little bit differently, but I promise you it will become easier as you make progress. The destination, which is to divert more resources to your business, will start to happen almost right away and pick up speed as you gain experience. We've seen this take place a number of times now. I've lived it at Dow Jones and News Corp. We've also seen the weather company, Hess, Qantas, Intuit, Samsung, Hearst, and thousands of others all go along a similar journey. And so through these experiences, we've observed a common set of practices that each organization employs along their way. These best practices illustrate the handful of areas that you as companies will invest in order to get the most out of the cloud, which will in turn allow you to devote more and more resources to your business. So first, they provide executive sponsorship. Projects in big companies are far more likely to succeed when the boss supports them. Next, they provide opportunities for their staff to learn. Everybody can participate in this journey with you. Computer science fundamentals have not changed. The way you use them and how quick you can deploy them has. The cost of experimentation in the cloud pales in comparison to what it does in traditional on-premises environments. You'll be able to get things done much more quickly, and you'll be more successful when you view your initiatives as experiments that provide valuable insight into how the organization moves forward. So now this is where I see a lot of customers get stuck. Everybody kind of gets to this point and they start to play around a little bit with the cloud, but making it real is something that a company needs to do and invest in itself and make investments while continuing to work on these previous 3 best practices. So the ecosystem of system integrators, digital consultancies, and IT vendors that are delivering cloud-based solutions has evolved quite a bit in the last several years. Whether you'd like to work directly with a partner or indirectly through the AWS marketplace, there's plenty of opportunities for you to accelerate your initiatives on the AWS platform. Next, they create a cloud center of excellence. We see a lot of customers creating DevOps organizations, but what you call it and where it sits in the organization is far less important than the fact that it exists and the executive support that it receives. Most large organizations have IT investments that they haven't quite fulfilled their useful life. Setting up a hybrid architecture allows customers to take advantage of the cloud while still benefiting from their existing assets and their data centers. And finally, when an organization realizes the benefits that the cloud can bring to their company, they end up instituting a cloud-first standard. A cloud-first standard reverses the burden of proof from why cloud for their projects to why not cloud for their projects. So let's talk a little bit about executive sponsorship. Projects in big companies are far more likely to succeed when the boss supports them. You don't need to bet the farm in the first month. You don't need to make a big risk in the first month. But you want to do something that's important enough to get the executive team's attention. If you're in a leadership or executive team, help everybody else understand the long run, the long game, and celebrate successes along the way. At Dow Jones, I used every opportunity to reinforce our cloud strategy on my blogs and my quarterly town halls and executive meetings and project planning meetings. Every opportunity I got, I used to help communicate why we were doing what we were doing and the benefits we were getting from it. If you're not in a position to make the decision, help the organization understand that they'll be able to devote more and more resources to their business. Oftentimes, I find that this is best to start with a small pilot project, show some small benefits, and then show how, with some growing investment, they'd be able to get more out of it. Think about how you can appeal to your stakeholders. There's politics in every executive team. Most CEOs will want a competitive advantage and look for ways to keep their resources focused on their business. Most CIOs desperately want to be aligned to the business need and be able to move as quickly and efficiently as possible as the company scales. Most CFOs, they want to save money. Not only can the cloud save you money, but it can help you improve cash flows, as each experiment requires almost no upfront investment. Marketers want to be able to respond quickly to market-changing events and have access to rich analytics on the massive amounts of data that they're now able to collect. Redshift, which is AWS's fastest growing service, has greatly simplified traditional data warehousing for many, many companies. Unilever's marketing team migrated 1,700 of their brand websites to AWS and is now moving 75% faster than they ever had before. Security officers want greater visibility into the IT environment and be able to have controls that will allow their customers, will allow them to alert and audit on their entire environment. And they can do so now with a simple API call. You should be open-minded about investing in your staff's skills. Now, I hear a lot of times that some organizations don't move forward because they don't feel that they have the skills needed to make the journey. I don't think that this is the right way to look at it. Anybody who wants to participate in this journey can. Anybody who wants to learn can learn. Basic computing fundamentals have not changed. Most companies that I talk to that embrace the idea of training their staff not only start to move a lot faster, but in many cases, they've used their cloud strategy as a way to retain and attract employees. This chart illustrates the growing number of job postings that list AWS somewhere in the job description. So I think this is a great indicator of what the industry is after, but also for the further growth of our platform. It's very good for you as an employer to know that the investments you make in your staff will continue to benefit the organization for a long time to come. And as an employee, it's great to know that the investment you're going to make in your career will continue to benefit you. Like all the practices in our journey, the more that you invest in this area, or the more internal champions you build, the faster you'll be able to move. We offer a wide variety of training courses. Some are self-service, some are instructor-led. On top of this, we provide several certification programs that give you and your workforce the peace of mind that you're using well-known best practices to implement your systems. We offer courses that not only go very deep in the technology stack, but also help your business community and your business users understand the benefits so that you can partner effectively with them on your journey. Now, at Dow Jones, I trained my entire staff with hands-on training. And while we did hire a lot of new people, much of what we accomplished was because the well-tenured folks in my staff became willing to learn new things and push their careers forward. Next, you should start to look at each project as an experiment. This is important in the beginning, but it's also an opportunity for you to change the way that you think about project portfolio management. Because the investment required to try new things is far lower than it ever has been, it becomes much easier to begin and try new projects. Even if things that you experiment with don't work out, you'll likely build some expertise that you didn't have before and be able to use that in your next projects. As the cloud muscle memory and the organization grows, and as you build off of each experiment, you'll be able to move a lot more quickly, and it will be much easier as you go. So let's start to look at how this journey unfolds as it relates to your existing investments. So on one hand, you have your data center, full of servers, storage, networking, and everybody's age-old friend, the mainframe. We used to keep a plastic dinosaur on top of our mainframe. Working alongside these assets are the staff that brings your systems to life. And now on the other hand, you have the cloud, where you'll be able to experiment with little to no upfront costs and a very small team of people. So the beauty of this scenario is that you're starting with a business problem that you had anyway, so you're able to leverage the staff that you already have. And since you don't have to procure infrastructure, you're likely to be able to avoid upfront costs and shorten the debate around whether or not that project is worth pursuing at all. At Dow Jones, our first experiment was a chat application that our CEO really wanted to build. It was his pet project. We needed to move very quickly, and we, frankly, weren't sure if it was something that would be worth pursuing longer term. Within a few weeks, we had a working prototype up, and within a few more weeks, we had a highly available production quality application that we began to integrate into our projects. These are things that just simply were not possible in a traditional environment where you needed to go out and buy hardware and dedicate it to the project and manage that extensively. Most companies I speak to find that it doesn't take many experiments before they realize some of the benefits, which allows them to focus on which experiments to run rather than be overwhelmed with a very large project portfolio. A lot of our customers leverage third parties to help them with their journey. Sometimes this is through pre-existing relationships, and other times we help them find partners to meet some of their new needs. There's a rich and growing inventory of consulting partners that are available to help you on your journey. There's a fast and growing ecosystem of born-in-the-cloud vendors like Second Watch, CloudReach, Minjar, and all of the major consulting firms at this point have now started to build cloud practices and are helping their customers understand what the cloud means to them. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to meet with the global sales executives at Capgemini, and they were all very optimistic about their growing cloud business, as are many of the other big players that some of you probably work with, like Accenture, Wipro, Infosys, Cognizant, and many others. There's also a very rich set of third-party tools that are available to help you manage your IT environment. Similar to the consulting partners, many of these vendors are born in the cloud, but there's also a number of traditional IT vendors like Riverbed, SAP, Splunk, and others who are making big bets to make their solutions available in a cloud-friendly way. AWS has a fast-growing professional services arm that we developed nearly 3 years ago when customers asked us for help in integrating cloud solutions into their business. For those of you who are going to stick around for Miha's presentation after mine, you'll be able to learn a lot more about that. But I will say that our professional services team is a little bit unique in that we focus on customer enablement rather than customer dependence. We believe that it's best to work with the partner community to jointly enable our customers. So it's my experience that there's a necessary friction between infrastructure and app teams. So sometimes this can be healthy as a system of checks and balances, but oftentimes this can become a little bit toxic. So because the cloud takes away a lot of the heavy lifting, the lines between the app and infrastructure teams becomes even more blurry. And we find that customers who develop a cloud center of excellence to drive best practices and governance through the organization are often able to get more out of their cloud investments than those who don't. So DevOps is a common name, though having the group is much more important than what you call it and where it reports. We have some customers who have a center of excellence for the whole company, some that have one center of excellence for each business unit, and everything in between. Whatever direction you head in, make sure that there's an opportunity to share best practices across the whole company. At Dow Jones, when I set up our DevOps organization, we had 3 requirements. One, that they were going to be customer service oriented, and I wanted everybody to come to me and tell me what a pleasure it was to work with DevOps, and they're going to go back because they want to, not because I'm making them. The second was that they had to automate everything. And it's fairly well known that you can't get everything that you can out of the cloud unless you can reliably reproduce your systems using software. So it was a requirement that everything that we built would be automated. And the third was that they were not going to be in the critical path, and they weren't a blocking group. So they were going to help all the other business units get up to speed, get their applications running on the cloud, and then step out of the way. And that each application group and business unit was going to run what they built. So as you build your inventory of automation scripts and experience, you're going to be able to use them in future projects. And every project becomes a little bit easier and smaller because you're able to leverage some of the things that you've done in the Center of Excellence leading up to that, and you're going to start to deliver results much faster. So what's going to happen as your Center of Excellence gains traction? You'll begin to leverage the pieces of automation that you build over time, and you'll be able to move much more quickly and accomplish more with less people. At this point, you're really starting to see the true value of the cloud, and in my experience, it doesn't take very long before you're able to start to devote more and more of your resources to the projects that move your business forward. So at Dow Jones, this was not something that we did overnight. It was a very deliberate exercise to move people around the company and around the department and give everybody a new opportunity to work on different business units and an opportunity to work on projects that drove revenue. At some point, you're going to find that you need to link your cloud applications up with your data center and need to communicate between them. AWS's virtual private cloud offers a straightforward way to establish secure connectivity between your data center and the cloud and allows you to communicate privately between the two. On top of this, you can leverage a number of security solutions. We have some, like our key management service and Cloud HSM, to make sure that all of your data is encrypted. You can also bring your own or use one that you already have. This can help you achieve the security posturing you need, knowing that the facilities in the data center underneath are being secured by a world-class team of engineers and taking advantage of the economies of scale from our over 1 million customers. Once this setup is complete, you're going to move much faster. Coupled with the expertise that you now have from your Cloud Center of Excellence, you'll be able to begin to move mission-critical applications that maybe you thought never before was possible, even if it's piece by piece. At the same time as this, I find many customers are now able to add features and performance characteristics to applications that they've wanted for a very long time but couldn't by using many of our other services. At Dow Jones, when we got to this point, we had about 30 or 40 instances that were running in the cloud. And we needed them to talk to our identity system, which ran in our data center. And so we set up the VPC, and to get IP addresses in our subnet, you needed to bring these new instances back up in the VPC. So my engineers read the documentation, how they were going to automate the snapshotting of these systems and bringing them back up in the VPC. They went back to their desks, and we were done in 45 minutes. Now, I've moved several data centers over the course of my career, which this was the equivalent of, and it always takes months, and something always goes wrong. Now we were able to do this in 45 minutes. At this point, you're likely steering away from substantial hardware purchases and maybe even migrating big pieces of functionality from your mainframe to services optimized in the cloud. And most importantly, this is where I begin to see companies get meaningful returns on their investments and devote more resources back to their business. It's another great opportunity to look at the AWS marketplace. We had to migrate a data center from Hong Kong to the AWS Tokyo region because we were getting the facility was going to be reused for something else. And my team was convinced we couldn't do it because we had a Cisco load balancer and a Radware WAN accelerator that were hardware in the data center. And my network engineer went and looked in the AWS marketplace, found that Cisco and Radware leased the same version of what we were using as software in the marketplace, downloaded the configuration files from the hardware, uploaded them to the AMIs, and we were done with no change in our ongoing operations. These are things that you simply cannot do in a data center. So finally, companies are becoming cloud first. At this point, you reach a tipping point. You've become more effective at doing things in the cloud than you are with your on-premises environments, and this is when cloud becomes the new normal. Now you're able to gain tremendous efficiencies across your projects, accomplishing much more with less, and often able to eliminate entirely traditional infrastructure costs. These are a handful of customers who have been through this journey and have made cloud-first declarations. There are thousands more. You have my alma mater, Dow Jones, Suncorp Financial, Acquia, Splunk, Nippon Express, here in Japan. And one of my favorite quotes from the CEO of Infor, one of the world leaders in enterprise applications, has been quoted as saying, "Friends do not let friends build data centers." So up until this point, most of your initiatives have likely been driven by business need. Eventually, you'll become so much more efficient implementing things in the cloud that migrating even entire data centers will have their own business case. So to help you with that, we have 11 regions around the world, which should help you regardless of where you're doing business. If you're experimenting with local systems, you're likely to start to experiment with the Singapore and the Tokyo region, and you'll get the advantage of being able to disperse your application across 2 regions with no additional effort. Having your applications built in the cloud and automated well will allow you to easily expand geographically. We were able to migrate entire applications, WSJ, MarketWatch, all across the world with no effort, all around the globe, to lower latency for users and follow the sun of business. Condé Nast is another great example, migrated all of their back office systems out of their data center in New Jersey and geographically distributed them. This is great for companies who acquire other companies because they're able to get a consistent and unified IT environment as they move things to AWS using their center of excellence as they acquire companies. And this also works really well in the other direction. Hess Corporation, an oil and gas company in the US, decided that they wanted to sell 40 of their business units. And they had their center of excellence take the IT assets from each of these subsidiaries, move them to the cloud, and the meeting to divest the IT assets was literally a 30-minute meeting where they handed over the AWS keys. So I hope that this was useful, and I will be around walking around the conference today should you have any questions. And domo arigato gozaimasu.
スティーブン様ありがとうございました。